I thought getting into Harvard was the hardest thing I'd ever have to face. I spent years pushing myself harder than anyone else, skipping sleep, skipping fun just to prove I could do it. And when the acceptance email finally came, I felt unstoppable. I felt like all my sacrifices had finally paid off. But that feeling didn't last long. Because then my mom said something I'll never forget. She told me I had to give up my spot at Harvard. Just like that. No debate, no discussion. And the reason? My sister needed it more. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My heart sank, my mind raced, and I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. All those late nights, all that hard work, all the dreams I had carefully built. Just gone. In that moment, I didn't know if I should be angry, sad, or numb. But one thing was clear. My life had changed forever. And even though it felt like the world had turned against me, that day didn't break me. Instead, it lit a fire inside me, a fire I never knew existed. A fire that would push me to fight, to prove, and to rise in ways I hadn't even imagined yet. Harvard wasn't a fantasy I picked because it sounded impressive. It was a goal I earned through years of struggle, sacrifice, and relentless effort. Every late night I stayed up studying while others were out having fun. Every weekend I spent buried in books instead of with friends. Every moment I said no to distractions was for this one chance. People often think success comes easy to some and not to others, but they don't see the quiet battles behind the scenes. I remember nights when my eyes were so tired they burned, but I refused to stop. I remember moments of self-doubt creeping in, whispering that maybe I wasn't enough, that maybe someone else deserved it more. But I kept going. Because giving up wasn't an option. Harvard wasn't just a school. It was the proof that effort, persistence, and sacrifice could actually change your life. When the acceptance email finally arrived, I didn't just feel joy. I felt validation. I felt the weight of all those years of hard work finally paying off. I cried, not because it was a dream come true, but because for the first time life felt fair. For once, it felt like the world recognized my effort, my commitment, and my determination. I wasn't born into privilege. I didn't have endless resources or connections. All I had was a stubborn belief in myself and a willingness to outwork everyone else. And that belief had carried me all the way to one of the most prestigious universities in the world. That email wasn't just an acceptance. It was proof that I could achieve anything I set my mind to. But the hardest part of my journey wasn't getting in. The hardest part came the moment I realized that just because I earned it didn't mean I could keep it. The realization that all my sacrifices could be taken away in an instant was something no one warns you about. And it was in that moment, standing on the edge of my dreams, that I realized life isn't just about working hard. It's also about how you handle the moments when everything you've built is threatened. Harvard was my battle, my proof, my dream. And losing it? That was about to become the most defining challenge of my life. I thought I understood my family. I thought we shared the same values, the same dreams, the same idea of fairness. But that illusion shattered the moment my mom spoke the words that would change everything. "You have to give up Harvard," she said, her voice calm, almost casual. "Your sister needs it more." For a moment the world stopped. I couldn't process what I was hearing. My sister, who hadn't put in half the effort I had, was suddenly more deserving? My years of hard work, my sleepless nights, my sacrifices, did they mean nothing? I tried to argue, to make her see reason. I tried to remind her of everything I had endured to earn that acceptance. But my words didn't matter. My mother's decision was final. The family-first logic was wrapped around a justification that felt cruel, unfair, and impossible to accept. I remember standing there, frozen, feeling anger, confusion, and heartbreak swirl together. It wasn't just disappointment. It was a deep, burning injustice. I had worked for something my entire life, and now it was being taken from me, not because I failed, but because someone else was deemed more worthy. In that moment I questioned everything. Did my mother even see me? Did she understand the sacrifices I had made? The dreams I had nurtured in secret, the endless nights I had spent pushing myself beyond limits. Did none of that count? But amid the heartbreak, a strange clarity began to emerge. I realized that this wasn't just a battle about Harvard. It was a test of resilience, of character, of whether I would let circumstances define me, or whether I would define myself no matter what life threw at me. And that's when I decided I couldn't stay trapped in despair. I couldn't let this moment destroy me. Yes, my dream was slipping away, but my ambition, my drive, my determination, that was mine, and no one could take that. Even as my mom's words echoed in my mind, Even as my heart felt heavy with betrayal, I felt a spark of something new, the desire to rise, to prove, to take control of my life in a way I hadn't imagined before. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a fight far bigger than Harvard. And I was ready to face it. Giving up Harvard felt like losing a part of myself I had built from the ground up. It wasn't just a college acceptance. It was a symbol of every late night, every no I had said to fun, every moment I had pushed my limits. And now my mom was asking me to hand it over as if all of that effort didn't matter. I remember the silence after she spoke. It wasn't peaceful, it was heavy, suffocating. I felt my dreams slipping through my fingers like sand. The world I had been carefully constructing, brick by brick, seemed to crumble in front of me. And the worst part? I couldn't even fight for it without feeling guilty because it was my sister. The one my family claimed needed it more. I sat alone that night, staring at the acceptance letter, tracing my own name on it with a trembling hand. Every memory of the journey flashed before me. The early mornings, the late nights, the sacrifices, the tears, the moments when giving up seemed easier than going on. And yet, I had kept going, believing that hard work would protect me from moments like this. But life had a way of testing me in ways I never imagined. There was anger, of course. Anger at the unfairness of it all. Anger at a world where effort didn't always guarantee reward. There was sadness, too. A deep, aching sorrow that felt like it had seeped into my bones. But beneath all of it, there was also a flicker of understanding, however small. Sacrifice is part of life, and sometimes it comes at the worst possible moments. Even so, accepting it was impossible. It felt like being forced to erase a part of my identity, a part of me that had fought tooth and nail for something that was mine. But life doesn't always wait for us to feel ready. And sometimes, the hardest moments demand that we find strength we didn't know existed. That night, alone with my thoughts, I realized something crucial. Losing Harvard wasn't just about a college. It was about resilience. It was about finding the courage to continue when everything seems against you. It was about learning that sacrifice, no matter how painful, can shape you into someone stronger than you ever imagined. And in that crushing moment of loss, a determination began to grow. I wouldn't let this define me. I wouldn't let it break me. I would find a way to turn this heartbreak into something greater, something that was still mine. Losing Harvard felt like my world had been flipped upside down, but I realized something crucial. I still had me. My dreams may have been stolen in that moment, but my drive, my determination, my ability to fight for myself, that couldn't be taken. And I refused to let this define who I was or what I could become. The first thing I did was quiet my anger, not because it wasn't justified, but because I needed clarity. Anger could have consumed me, kept me stuck in that painful moment, letting my loss define every step I took. Instead, I channeled that energy into a plan, a vision of the future I could still build for myself. Harvard may not have been mine anymore, but opportunity was still out there. And I would find it. I began to look at the situation differently. This wasn't just a loss, it was a challenge. Life had thrown me an obstacle bigger than any I had faced before, and I knew that how I responded would determine my path. I decided I wouldn't mourn for long. I wouldn't let despair steal my potential. I would take control of my story, and I would rise stronger than I had ever been. I set goals outside of what anyone expected. I sought out opportunities, learned new skills, and pushed myself in directions I might never have considered if Harvard had gone according to plan. Every step I took was fueled by the memory of that moment. The feeling of injustice, the sting of loss, and the fire that ignited within me when I realized I still had power over my own life. It wasn't easy. Some days the heartbreak returned like a shadow I couldn't shake. But each time I reminded myself that my worth wasn't defined by a single acceptance letter. My ambition, my ideas, my determination to succeed, that was mine forever. Losing Harvard wasn't the end, it was a test. And I was determined to pass it on my terms. By refusing to let my circumstances define me, I discovered something far more valuable than a college acceptance. I discovered resilience. I discovered creativity, strength, and the courage to forge a path that wasn't laid out for me, but one I could own entirely. And that decision to rise instead of sink became the turning point that would shape everything that came next. Losing Harvard felt like the end of the road, but I realized it could also be the beginning of something even bigger. I had a choice: sit in regret and let life pass me by, or take control and turn this loss into power. I chose the latter. I threw myself into new opportunities. I explored paths I had never considered, honed skills I hadn't thought I needed, and built experiences that no classroom could offer. Every setback became fuel, every no, a challenge to push harder. Slowly, I began to see that life had given me a gift disguised as heartbreak. A chance to redefine success on my own terms. It wasn't easy. The memory of that day, of my mother's words, lingered like a shadow. But instead of letting it crush me, I used it as a compass, guiding me toward growth. I networked, learned relentlessly, and chased projects that excited me. Each achievement, no matter how small, reminded me that I still had control over my future. In the end, I realized that Harvard was never the true prize. The real prize was resilience, creativity, and the ability to turn obstacles into opportunities. Losing a dream didn't mean losing myself. It meant I had to build a new dream, one that no one could take away. By the time I looked back, the pain had transformed into strength. That single moment of loss became a story of empowerment. And I learned a lesson I will carry forever. Sometimes when life takes away what you love, it's only preparing you to become someone stronger, smarter, and unstoppable. Losing Harvard felt like losing a part of myself, but it taught me lessons I could never have learned any other way. I realized that life isn't always fair, and hard work doesn't always guarantee immediate reward. But fairness isn't what defines us. How we respond to challenges does. One of the biggest lessons I learned is that resilience is stronger than any setback. When everything you've worked for is taken away, you discover the parts of yourself you didn't know existed. The determination, the creativity, and the courage to keep moving forward even when it feels impossible. That fire inside me, the one that ignited the day I lost my dream, became my guide. I also learned the importance of owning your story. Life may try to dictate your path, but you always have the power to choose how you walk it. Losing Harvard didn't define me. It forced me to redefine what success meant for me, and to create opportunities that were mine, not borrowed. And perhaps the most surprising lesson was about perspective. What feels like the end can sometimes be the beginning. The heartbreak, the disappointment, even the anger. All of it became fuel to grow, to create, and to thrive in ways I hadn't imagined. Losing something I loved made me stronger, sharper, and more focused than ever before. In the end, the experience taught me that dreams aren't just destinations. They're the resilience, lessons, and growth we gather along the way. Life may take away what we cherish most, but it also gives us the chance to rise, to fight, and to build something even greater. Losing Harvard didn't stop me. It became the moment that shaped everything I would achieve next.